and so on. Keyboards come equipped with two different connector types. There's the older 6-pin DIN connector, which has pretty much become obsolete, and there's also the modern USB connector. A lot of keyboards will have the ability to use both connectors because a lot of times they will come with a DIN to USB adapter, which you can use with any computer with either a DIN or USB connection. A mouse is another basic input device that is used on a computer. It's a pointing device that fits in the palm of your hand and replicates the movement of the mouse onto the computer screen. It's used for things like starting applications, file and folder management, and surfing the internet. A mouse will typically have one or two buttons. A Macintosh mouse will have one button, while a Windows mouse will have at least two buttons. A digital camera is a device that takes digital pictures and videos. And unlike standard cameras where the images are stored on film, a digital camera stores the images on an internal hard drive or on the camera's SD card. And once the images are stored, they can then be downloaded to the computer by using a USB cable or by the SD card. And then once they're on the computer, the images can be viewed or printed. A barcode reader is a device that is used for reading barcodes. It uses light to scan barcodes, and it's typically used to detect point of sales and maintain inventory. It can connect to a computer through a serial port, USB port, or a wireless connection. Barcode readers can come in several forms, but the most popular is the handheld trigger type. Now, a scanner is a device that enables you to put a digital copy of a physical copy on your computer. So, for example, if you have a photo or a document and you wanted to put a digital image of that photo or document on your computer, well, that's what a scanner enables you to do. Scanners will typically have a flat bed where you can place the photo or document face down, and at the press of a button, it will scan it for you. And as the scanner moves across the document or photo, it saves the image to your computer. Scanners will typically come in a combination with a printer, or you can also purchase a scanner all by itself. A touchscreen is basically an LCD monitor with an input detection system. It's a grid that senses the touch by a finger. It works the same way as if you were using a mouse, but without the mouse itself, because you are using the finger instead. The touchscreen receives a touch in the same way as if you were clicking a mouse button. Typically, one click on a mouse button equals one tap by a finger, and two clicks of a mouse equals two taps by a finger. Touchscreens are commonly used in all-in-one computers and tablets, such as the iPad, and they are also used on certain phones with touchscreen technology. A webcam is a device that is used for capturing video and images. Webcams are mainly used for video conferencing and video calling over the internet. So any two people in the world can visually communicate with each other if they both have a webcam and an internet connection. And most webcams have a built-in microphone to capture audio. A webcam connects to a computer typically through a USB cable. Webcams are often used with messaging applications such as Skype for making visual calls. And two of the biggest manufacturers of webcams are Logitech and Microsoft. A media card reader gives the computer the ability to read memory cards from devices such as cameras. It's a small device that usually has a USB cable attached at one end that connects to a computer, and then the body of the reader has slots to accommodate various sizes of memory cards. For example, micro SD and mini SD cards. And then once installed, the data from the memory cards can be read and transferred to the computer. The docking station is used for laptop computers. It's a device that is used for basically turning your laptop into virtually a desktop computer. We all know that laptops are generally smaller than desktops. For example, on the laptop, the monitor and keyboard are generally small. So if you wanted to use your laptop at your desk, and you wanted to use a bigger monitor and keyboard, you can simply set the laptop in the docking station, and it will automatically connect to them and use them depending on what is already plugged into the docking station, whether it's a monitor, keyboard, mouse, printer, etc. It eliminates the hassle of connecting all these individually. You just simply attach and then start using them instantly. But there's one thing to remember about docking stations, is that they are specific to the manufacturer. So there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all docking station. You need to get the specific one for your laptop. The KVM switch allows you to control multiple computers from a single monitor, keyboard, and mouse. A KVM is typically a box with ports for a video, mouse, and keyboard. Each computer has their own individual cable connections to the KVM. Each KVM has buttons that you can press so that you can switch to a different computer you want to control. KVMs also come in different sizes, depending upon how many computers the KVM can handle. A low-end KVM switch will have the ability to control 2 computers, while a higher-end KVM can control 8 computers. KVMs are handy when you want to control multiple computers without the need for a dedicated monitor, keyboard, and mouse for each one. This not only saves money, but it also saves space. A lot of TVs today are smart TVs. A smart TV is a television where you can not only watch TV, but you can also connect to the internet. So basically, it's a television combined with a computer. And when it's connected to the internet, you can go to web pages, stream movies, and television shows. And you can also interact with other people across the internet by using video messaging services such as Skype. Because a lot of smart TVs will also have a built-in webcam and microphone. One way to prove the identity of a person is by using a smart card. A smart card is a good choice to prove your identity, because you always have to have it with you when proving your identification. A smart card is the same size as a credit card with an embedded microprocessor chip. And a smart card reader is a device that is used to accept and read smart cards. A biometric device is used to prove the identity of a person by recognizing unique physical characteristics. For example, a fingerprint scanner. Fingerprint scanners are used to read a user's fingerprint to prove authentication. And these days, a lot of fingerprint scanners will be built into a device, such as a laptop or a smartphone. You just swipe your finger across the fingerprint scanner, and the scanner will either grant or deny you access based on your fingerprint. Another type of input device is a motion sensor. And a motion sensor records your hand movement in mid-air without making any physical contact with the device. A motion sensor would also typically connect to your computer using a USB cable. Now, a digitizer is a device that is used to convert analog movement, such as a hand drawing, and convert it into a digital form on your computer. A digitizer will have a flat surface like a tablet with a stylus. And as you draw on the flat surface using the stylus, it will record the image from the stylus and process the drawing on your computer screen. A digitizer typically connects to your computer using a USB cable. Other input devices include gamepads and joysticks. Now these are controllers that you would typically use for gaming systems, such as Xboxes and PlayStations. But you can also use these for computers. And if you're going to use these with a computer, they will typically connect using a USB connection.
சொல்லொரு மகிமை என்றுமே உயர்ந்தவரே எல் ஷடாய் சர்வ வல்லவரே எல் ரோயி காண்பவர் என்ன பார்க்கிறவரே.
A computer monitor is the primary output component of a computer. It connects to the computer's video adapter through a monitor cable and displays images on the screen. A computer monitor may have a VGA, DVI, HDMI, or a display port. Now, an older type of monitor is called CRT. CRT stands for cathode ray tube, which was the technology first used in TV sets. These monitors are bulky and heavy and take up a lot of desk space, and they are pretty much non-existent in the marketplace today. An image is produced on CRT by using 3-color electron guns. These colors are red, blue, and green, which, when you combine them, they are able to produce any color on the color spectrum. And these guns shoot beams of electrons on the screen and create an image that we see. These beams repeatedly sweep across the face of the monitor many times per second. So it's constantly redrawing the image that we see on the screen. And this redrawing of the image is known as the refresh rate. And the refresh rate is measured in hertz. So for example, if the refresh rate is 60 hertz, then that means that the beams sweep across the entire face of the monitor, redrawing the image at the rate of 60 times per second. Now, to the naked eye, most people cannot detect this because it does it so fast. But a lot of times, some people complain of discomfort in their eyes because they are noticing this constant refreshing of the image. But this problem is usually solved by increasing the refresh rate, which makes the refreshing of the image less noticeable, which reduces the amount of eye discomfort. Inside CRT monitor is a metal plate called a shadow mask. This metal plate can pick up outside electromagnetic fields, which can cause discoloration on the screen. And because of this, CRT monitors need to be degaussed. Degaussing is the process of getting rid of the unwanted magnetic fields. And most CRTs do an automatic degauss when the monitor is turned on, or the monitor may have a button that you can press to do a degauss. Another type of monitors are LCD, which stands for Liquid Crystal Display. LCD monitors produce an image on a flat surface by using liquid crystals. Light shines through these crystals to produce an image on the screen, and it uses filters to produce different colors. LCDs were first used in laptop computers and now have made their way to the desktop marketplace and have completely replaced CRT monitors. They are lighter, thinner, use less power, and take up less space than CRTs. LCDs are also known as flat panel displays.
இன்னும் கெட்டி
Modern LCDs use a technology called TFT, which stands for Thin Film Transistor. And as the name implies, this technology uses a thin film transistor to create a higher quality image when compared to a standard LCD, because each single pixel on the screen has its own transistor, and all LCDs sold today have TFT technology. Now, there are two different types of LCD monitors that you're going to need to know for the exam, and one of them is called TN. TN stands for Twisted Dramatic, and this type of LCD monitors works by liquid crystals actually twisting the light as it comes through. Now, TN is an older and cheaper technology that's been around for several decades. The viewing angles and the color reproduction on a TN monitor are not as good as a more modern LCD monitor. A TN monitor is often used with calculators, digital watches, and older LCD monitors. Now, a newer and more modern type of LCD monitor is IPS. And IPS stands for in-plane switching. This type of monitor works by, instead of the liquid crystals twisting like in a TN monitor, the liquid crystals in an IPS monitor stay in place and are aligned in parallel with the glass. IPS LCDs use more transistors than a TN monitor, so as a result, it does consume more power. IPS monitors were designed to improve on the limitations of TN monitors. They offer better color reproduction and better viewing angles. In order for LCD monitors to show an image on a screen, it needs a light source. There are a couple of types of backlighting that an LCD monitor uses, and one type of lighting is by using fluorescent lamps. These fluorescent lamps are the circular straight tubing types, similar to the regular fluorescent lamps that we're all used to seeing. These lamps emit ultraviolet light that's created when the mercury vapor inside the lamp is ionized. And another type of backlighting that LCD monitors use is LED. LED monitors use multiple light-emitting diodes that are arranged in a pattern that displays the images on the screen. Now, this is a more modern form of backlighting compared to fluorescent lamp backlighting. In fact, most, if not all, new LCDs today use LED backlighting. Now, both of these monitors are considered LCD monitors, but the LCD that uses the LED backlighting is considered an LED monitor. So an LED monitor is just an LCD monitor that uses LED backlighting. Resolution is defined as a number of pixels that are used to display an image on the screen. For example, if a monitor is set to a resolution of 1280 by 720, then this means that there are 1280 horizontal pixels by 720 vertical pixels, which means that there are 921,600 total pixels that are being used. The higher the resolution, the higher the number of pixels will be used, which means a clearer and sharper image. Depending upon the hardware and software being used, resolutions can be set anywhere from 640 by 480 up to 1920 by 1200 or more. LCDs produce the best quality image when they are set to their highest resolution, which is called their native resolution. Resolutions are also given different names for identity purposes. For example, XGA stands for Extended Graphics Array. This has a resolution of 1028 by 768. SXGA stands for Super Extended Graphics Array. This has a resolution of 1280 by 1024.
ஸ்தோத்திரம் அப்பா. நன்றி செலுத்துகிறேன் தகப்பனே. அருமையான தேவ பிரசன்னத்திலே எங்களை காலை தோறும் நடத்தி வந்தீங்களே. இவ்வளவு நேரமாய் நடத்தினீங்களே, இவ்வளவு நேரமாய் தாங்கினீங்களே. உங்க பிரசன்னத்துக்கு நன்றி. இனியும் நடத்த போறதுக்காக நன்றி. வருகிற ஒவ்வொரு ஜெப நேரங்கள், ஆராதனைகள், வார்த்தைகள், ஒவ்வொரு பகுதிகளிலும் பரிசுத்த ஆவியானவர்
And this has a resolution of 1920 by 1200. And lastly, the contrast ratio. The contrast ratio refers to the contrast between black and white. The higher the contrast, the better the display.
உனக்கு அறிவிப்பேன் என்று சொன்னவர் இந்த காலத்திலே, இந்த நாள்ல தேவன் அப்படிப்பட்ட வாக்குத்தத்தத்தினாலே, அப்படிப்பட்ட வசனத்தினாலே உம்முடைய பிள்ளைகளை நீர் ஆசீர்வதிக்கும்படியாக, நீர் நடத்தும்படியாக உம்முடைய கரத்திலே நான் ஒப்பு கொடுத்து ஜெபிக்கிறேன். கர்த்தாவே, இதுவரைக்கும் ஆண்டவரே, எரேமியா 33வது அதிகாரம் 1 வசனம் சொல்லுகிறதை போல நீ அறியாததும் உனக்கு எட்டாததுமான பெரிய காரியங்களை உனக்கு அறிவிப்பேன். இந்த வசனத்தின்படி பிள்ளைகளை இந்த மாதம் முழுவதும் நீ நடத்தும் பெரிய காரியங்களை தேவன் பேசி நடத்தும்படி, உங்களுடைய வாழ்க்கையில் ஒரு ஆசீர்வாதத்தை பார்க்கும்படி ஒவ்வொரு நேரங்களிலும் செப நேரங்களில் பரிசுத்த ஆவியானவர் கூட இருக்கும்படியாக இயேசு கிறிஸ்துவின் நாமத்தில் ஒப்புக்கொடுக்கிறேன். ஆண்டவரே, சுமார் சிலர் ஒப்புக்கொடுக்கிறேன். கர்த்தாவே, அவர்களை ஆசீர்வதியும். ஊழியங்களோடு இருந்து பிள்ளைகளோடு கூட இருந்து அருமையாய் கர்த்தருடைய கரம் ஆண்டவரே அவர்கள் மேல் அமர்ந்திருப்பதாக, ஆசீர்வதிப்பதாக தேவன் வல்லமையாக பயன்படுத்தும்படியாக ஜெபிக்கிறேன். இந்த ஊழியத்தில் இணைந்திருக்கிற பிள்ளைங்க ஆண்டவரே அருமையான மங்களமாக ஜெபிக்கிறேன். பிரச்சனமாக ஜெபிக்கிறேன். இந்த ஸ்கைப் மினிஸ்ட்ரிக்காக ஜெபிக்கிறேன். ஆண்டவரே மேரியம்மாவுக்கு ஜெபிக்கிறேன். ஆண்டவரே இணைந்து இந்த gospel மூலமாய் கேட்டுக்கொண்டிருக்கிறேன். இந்த ஜோடா மூலமாய் கேட்டுக்கொண்டிருக்கிற ஒவ்வொரு பிள்ளைகள் மேல தேவனுடைய மகிமை தங்குவதாக. ஆண்டவரே இவர்களுடைய வாழ்க்கையை செழிப்பதாக. பெரிய காரியங்களை இந்த மாதத்திலே அற்புதங்கள், அதிசயங்கள் இந்த மாதம் பார்க்கிறோம். கடந்த மாதங்களிலே, கடந்த வருஷத்திலே ஆண்டவரே பட்ட பாடுகளின் நன்மைகளை இந்த ஆண்டில், இந்த மாதத்தில் இருந்து பார்க்கிறோம். இந்த மத்திய மாதங்களில் இருந்து திருப்பு முனையை கர்த்தருடைய பிள்ளைகளுக்கு கட்டளையிடுகிறேன். இதோ இந்த மத்திய மாகாணத்தில் இருந்து தேவன் புதிய மாற்றத்தை கட்டளையிடுகிறேன். அநேகருடைய வாழ்க்கையில் ஒரு மாற்றம் வருகிறதுக்காய் ஸ்தோத்திரம். உடைய கரத்திலே ஒப்புக் கொடுத்து ஆசீர்வதித்து ஜெபிக்கிறேன். ஜீவனுள்ள நல்ல பிதாவே.
There are non-impact printers and impact printers. Non-impact printers print without striking an ink ribbon onto paper. These include laser, inkjet, and thermal printers. Impact printers are dot matrix printers, which we'll talk about shortly.
அப்பா, இந்த வேளையிலும் கூட அந்த அதிகாலை வேளையில என் தேவனாய் கர்த்தாவே உம்முடைய நாமத்தை மகிமைப்படுத்தும், உம்முடைய நாமத்தை துதிக்கும். ஆண்டவரே, தந்த நல்ல ஸ்லாக்கியத்துக்கு நன்றி. பாஸ்டர் உம்முடைய கரத்துக்குள் ஒப்புக் கொடுக்கிறேன். ஆண்டவரே, 6 மாதங்களாக கண்மணியை போல பணியாற்றி 7வது மாதத்தில் அடியெடுத்து வைத்திருக்கிற உம்முடைய பிள்ளையை நீர் ஆசீர்வதியும். ஆண்டவரே கர்த்தாவே, பாடல்கள், ஜெபங்கள் எல்லாவற்றையும் நீர் ஆண்டவரே இந்த நாளிலே அங்கீகரித்தீர். ஆண்டவரே, கோடான கோடி ஸ்தோத்திர பலிகளையும் நன்றி பலிகளையும் ஏறெடுக்கிறேன் தகப்பனே. ஆண்டவருடைய ஊழியத்தின் பாதையில் அவரோடு கூட கடந்து செல்லுங்க ராஜா. தேவைகள் எல்லாவற்றையும் இந்த நாளிலே சந்தித்து கொடுங்க அப்பா. ஆண்டவரே, குடும்பத்தை கருத்துக்களை ஒப்புக் கொடுக்கிறேன். மனைவி, பிள்ளைகள், ஆண்டவரே, ஊழியங்கள், சபைகள், ஆத்மாக்கள் எல்லாவற்றையும் திருக்கரத்துக்களை ஒப்புக் கொடுக்கிறேன். ஆவியானவர் தொடர்ந்தவரை வழி நடத்துங்க. ஆண்டவரே, இனிமினுமாக கர்த்தாவுக்கு அறியாதது உனக்கு எட்டாதமான சகல காரியங்களை ஆண்டவரே கர்த்தாவே, ஆண்டவரே கர்த்தாவே பெற்றுக்கொள்ளத்தக்கதாக நீங்க சொன்னீங்களே அந்த வார்த்தை படி கர்த்தாவே, ஆண்டவரே அறியாதது எட்டாதமான அநேக காரியங்களை ஆண்டவரே நீங்க கொடுத்து நீர் ஆசீர்வதிக்க போகிறபடியால் உமக்கு நன்றி என்று சொல்கிறேன். இந்த நாள் முழுவதும் கர்த்தர் தாமே பாதுகாத்துக் கொள்ள நாட்களுடைய தேவைகள் எல்லாவற்றையும் சந்தித்துக் கொடுங்கப்பா. போகும் பொழுதும் வரும் பொழுதும் என் தேவனாய் கர்த்தர் யோசுவாவோடு இருந்தது போல இருந்தது கர்த்தாவே, நீ வழி நடத்த வேண்டும்படியாக நல்ல இயேசுவின் நாமத்தில் ஜெபித்து ஒப்புக் கொடுக்கிறேன் என் நல்ல பிதாவே. ஆமென், ஆமென். God bless you pastor. கர்த்தர் உங்களோடு கூட இருப்பார். ஆமென். நன்றி ஆண்டவரே, உங்களை நன்றியோடு கூட நாங்கள் துதிக்கிறோம், ஸ்தோத்திரிக்கிறோம் ராஜா. ஆண்டவரே, இந்த தேவனாய் முதலாம் திருச்சபையிலே ஆண்டவரே கர்த்தாவே அப்பா உம்மை ஆராதிப்பதற்கும் உம்முடைய வார்த்தையை கொடுப்பதற்கும் நீர் ஆண்டவரே கர்த்தாவே ஜீவனை கொடுத்து வைத்திருக்கிறீர். கோடி கோடி ஸ்தோத்திரம் என்று சொல்கிறேன் ஆண்டவரே. பரலோக ராஜாவே, உங்களுக்கு கோடான கோடி ஸ்தோத்திரம் என்று சொல்கிறேன். நன்றி என்று சொல்கிறோம். நன்றியோடு ஸ்தோத்திரிக்கிறோம் ஆண்டவரே. எல்லா சூழ்நிலைகளிலும் ஆண்டவரே கத்த எல்லா நேரங்களிலும் ஆண்டவரே எல்லா நிமிடங்களிலும் ஆண்டவரே எங்களோடு கூட நீங்க கடந்து வந்திருக்கிறீங்க. அப்ப உங்களுக்கு கோடான கொடி ஸ்தோத்திரம் ஆண்டவரே, உங்களுக்கு கோடி ஸ்தோத்திரம் ஆண்டவரே. அப்பா ஒரு நாளும் ஆண்டவரே கடந்த மாதத்திலே ஒரு நாள் கூட ஆண்டவரே எங்களை கைவிடவில்லை ஆண்டவரே. நேற்றும் இன்றும் என்றும் மாறாத தெய்வம் எங்களோடு கூட இருந்தீங்க ஆண்டவரே. ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் எங்களை போஷித்தீங்க.
Another non-impact printer is called a thermal printer. Thermal printers print by using heat. Thermal printers use special print paper called thermal paper, and on this thermal paper is wax-based ink. And when heat is applied to this ink, it turns black. So in a thermal printer, the only thing the printhead does is apply heat to the areas where the ink should be placed. Then, when the ink is cooled, it becomes permanent. And because of this technology, thermal printers are very quiet. Thermal printers are commonly used for printing labels and barcodes. Dot matrix printers are almost non-existent today. They are an old technology that produces mediocre print quality when compared to laser or inkjet printers. And they are also very noisy. Dot matrix printers are impact printers. The printhead in a dot matrix printer moves across the paper, and as it moves, the pins on the printhead strike against a cloth ink ribbon, which then comes in direct contact with the paper, producing each character in the form of dots. But despite being an outdated technology, dot matrix printers can print multi-copy documents, such as carbon copies. They are also very durable and last a long time. Several issues are going to happen when you're printing. So for example, if you're printing something and you see streaks, well then this could be a problem with the ink cartridges on an inkjet printer. A lot of times the software that comes with the printer will have a list of software tools that you can use to clean the printhead. Or if the streaks are real bad, you may have to remove the ink cartridges from the printhead and manually clean them with a lint-free cloth. Or another problem that can happen is when you try to print something and the image is faded or it's completely blank. And this could also be a problem with dirty ink cartridges, or it could be something as simple as maybe you're low on ink. Now, ghosting is another problem that can happen with laser printers. Ghosting is when you see a faint image of a page that you previously printed and you see the same image on a newly printed page. And this is usually caused by the drum or the fuser. The drum on the laser printer has a lifespan after so many prints, and then you have to replace it. So you can try replacing the drum, but if you still see the same problem after you replace the drum, then the problem could be the fuser. So then the fuser would have to be replaced. Paper jams are another problem that can happen with printers. So if you try to print something and the paper doesn't come out, well then you could have a paper jam. Paper jams could be caused by debris inside the printer. And debris inside the printer could also be the result of the paper coming out creased. Or it could also be caused by faulty pickup rollers. Now this typically happens with older printers, because when the rollers wear out, they tend to have difficulty grabbing the paper and feeding it through. So in these cases, you might want to inspect the rollers to see if they need replacing, or open up the printer and check for any debris inside the printer. Another issue is if you're printing something and the color may not be printing correctly. And all this could be is that maybe that one of the color ink cartridges are faulty, or they are low on ink or even out of ink. A lot of times when you're trying to print something and then absolutely nothing happens, well then this could be a connectivity issue. Connectivity issues are extremely common, especially when you're dealing with network printers. But the first things to check are the obvious ones. For example, make sure the printer is actually turned on. Or check for any errors on the printer's LCD display if it has one. Or if the printer has a wired connection, then make sure that the network cable is connected correctly. You should always check the obvious things first before diving into the more complicated issues, such as seeing if the printer has an actual IP address. Because doing the simple and obvious things first will save you a lot of time. Instead of printing a document onto physical paper, you can also print your document and store it on your computer in a digital form. And this is called virtual printing. Virtual printing is done for several reasons. And one of those reasons is called print to file. Print to file saves the document in a ready-to-print format that another printer can print. So for example, if you want to print a document and you don't have a printer, well then you can use the print to file feature and it will save the document in an uneditable digital form that can be sent to another computer, for example maybe through email or a flash drive transfer, and then that computer can print the job for you. Another form of virtual printing is called print to PDF. PDF stands for Portable Digital Format. Printing a file to PDF prints a virtual document into a format that's universally readable across all devices, whether it's PC, Mac, or smartphones. And then once it's printed to a PDF, the file can be transferred to different devices, such as through email or through a flash drive. And because the PDF format is so common, just about every new device on the market today will be able to read a PDF file without adding any additional software. But older devices may need additional software installed in order to read a PDF document. The most common PDF reader is Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is available free to download. A computer has basically two types of memory, primary memory and secondary memory. Now, primary memory is temporary, which we'll talk about later, but secondary memory is permanent, and this deals with the hard disk drive. The hard disk drive is a sealed case that contains magnetic disks, and these disks is where the actual data is stored on. These disks rotate at high speeds, and as they do, the actuator arm will either write data to the disks or read data from the disks, depending upon what the user wants to do. These magnetic disks can rotate at speeds of either 5400, 7200, or 10,000 RPM. The typical hard drive that's used today in desktops would operate at 7200 RPM. Cheaper desktop hard drives would operate typically at the 5400 RPM range, which is also the speed of a typical laptop hard drive. And the higher end hard drives would operate at the 10,000 RPM range. But these higher end hard drives are not commonly used anymore because of the advanced speeds of solid state drives. And also hard drives are considered non-volatile because they can retain and store data when not connected to a power source. Hard drives today use the serial ATA interface. Now this is a newer standard that is faster than the old parallel ATA interface. Instead of data traveling in a parallel path, the data travels in a serial path, which means that data travels one bit at a time. SATA drives have transfer speeds averaging 6 gigabits per second, which is considerably faster than the old parallel ATA. Other advantages of SATA drives is that they are hot swappable and the cables are a lot smaller, which makes cable management a lot easier. Another type of storage device is a solid-state drive. Now these drives have no moving parts. This type of drive uses flash memory chips to store data. And since it has no moving parts, the data transfer is very fast. There are also drives out there that combine the use of magnetic disks and flash memory, and these are called hybrid drives. Hybrid drives takes advantage of the large capacity and the low cost of magnetic disks with the speed of an SSD. In a hybrid drive, the magnetic disks will be used to store data, while the flash memory would be used for the caching of the data. Hybrid drives are primarily used where cost is an issue, because SSD drives are considerably more expensive than magnetic disk drives. Removable storage is both convenient and portable because these types of storage are not stored internally in a computer. They are attached from the outside. So for example, a tape drive. A tape drive is an inexpensive way to back up data from your hard drive. It attaches to a computer, usually with a USB cable, and the data is backed up sequentially to tape, which basically means that if you ever have to restore the data, you have to restore the data in the same order as you backed it up. CD-ROM drives have become a standard component in computers today. It's a device that reads data from a CD-ROM, which is a disk that stores permanent data. CD-ROM stands for Compact Disc Read-Only Memory, which means that the data can only be read to and cannot be changed or written to. CDRW stands for Compact Disc Rewritable. A CDRW drive can change or write data to a CD. It has a moving laser assembly that writes or burns the data to a CD. Now there are two different kinds of CDs that can be written to. A CDR, which stands for CD recordable, or CDRW, which stands for CD rewritable. Now CDRs can only be written once too, but a CDRW allows data to be rewritten multiple times. And CD-ROMs hold approximately 700 megabytes of data. A DVD-ROM drive is a device that reads DVD discs. The DVD drive has largely replaced ordinary CD-ROM drives because of the larger storage capacity of DVD discs. A DVD can store approximately 4.7 gigabytes of data. And all DVD drives today can read both DVD and CD-ROMs. And like a CD-RW drive, there is also a DVD-RW drive. And this can change or write data onto a DVD. It can write data onto DVD-R discs and rewrite data onto DVD-RW discs. And as stated previously, a DVD disc can hold approximately 4.7 gigs of data. And some DVD burners have the capability of burning dual-layer DVDs. And these are called dual-layer DVD-RW drives. Dual-layer DVDs have two recordable layers, so they can store nearly twice the amount of data than a regular DVD. Dual-layer DVDs can hold approximately 8.5 gigs of data. Blu-ray is the latest optical drive to date that was released in 2006. Blu-ray will eventually replace the DVD format because of its high capacity. Blu-ray uses a shorter wavelength laser compared to DVD, which allows a Blu-ray disc to store far more data than a DVD. A standard Blu-ray disc can hold 25 gigabytes of data, which is 5 times more than a DVD. Now, just like CD recordable and DVD recordable drives, Blu-ray also has a recordable drive and this is called BDR, or Blu-ray Disc Recordable Drive. And this is where you can burn data to a Blu-ray disc one time. Or you can also erase data and overwrite the data on a Blu-ray disc using a BDRE, or Blu-ray Recordable Erasable Drive. So as stated before, standard single-sided Blu-ray discs hold 25 gigabytes of data. Or there's also Blu-ray double-layer discs, which hold 50 gigabytes of data. Another type of removable storage is what's known as a solid-state disk. Now these have no moving parts. This type of memory uses memory chips to store data, and these include thumb drives. A thumb drive is a miniature storage device with a USB interface. These devices can store anywhere from 500 megabytes up to 256 gigabytes, and their size is small enough to fit on a keychain. These are a fast and convenient way to store data on the go. Secure digital or SD cards are a popular type of flash memory. Now these are primarily used in digital cameras for storing photographs and videos. Then these photographs and videos can then be easily transferred to a computer with an SD card reader interface. SD cards come in various capacities, anywhere from 2 gigabytes up to 512 gigabytes. Other types of SD cards include the mini SD and the micro SD, and you can see the comparison of the different sizes here. And while the standard SD card is used for storage in a lot of digital cameras, the micro SD card is what's commonly used in smartphones for adding extra storage. Another type of flash drive that is commonly used in a lot of DSLR cameras is compact flash. Compact flash cards provide quick and easy storage for pictures and videos in DSLR cameras, and they can be easily transferred to a computer by using a card reader. And a type of non-standard SD card would be the older XD picture card, where XD stands for Extreme Digital. And this was a type that was proprietary in Olympus and Fujifilm cameras. The kind of memory that you would typically find inside smartphones and tablets is called eMMC. eMMC stands for Embedded Multimedia Controller. eMMC consists of putting flash memory and a flash memory controller into one package. So this is the tablet's or smartphone's internal or embedded memory and not the external storage like an SD card. Now a hot spare is defined as equipment that can be swapped out without the need of turning off the power. So for example, if you had a server with multiple hot swappable hard drives, and if a hard drive were to fail, you wouldn't need to shut down the server. You would just simply remove the hard drive and replace it with a new one while the power is still on. Now a cold spare is similar to a hot spare, but with a cold spare you must turn off the power first in order to replace the piece of equipment. You may come across issues when you're dealing with mobile devices such as cell phones. And two of the biggest cell phone operating systems are Apple and Android. A lot of cell phones today are touchscreen, and one of the common problems you may encounter with touchscreens is that sometimes they are not responsive. You touch the screen and nothing happens. So when this happens, the best thing to do in this case is to power off the phone and then turn it back on. And a lot of times this does fix the issue. Or if you power it back on and you still have the issue, you can try and eject the SIM card and then putting it back in. Or if that doesn't work, then you may have to do a hard reset on your cell phone. And you can refer to the manufacturer's documents for specifics on how to do a hard reset for your specific device. Or sometimes you may have issues when you touch an app and the app won't load, or you may have an issue with the performance of your device and you find it to be running very slow. And a lot of this is caused by having too many apps open already, and those apps are eating up memory and CPU resources and slowing down the performance of your device or even freezing it. So the first thing you should do is to try to kill any apps that you have open and see if that fixes the issue. For example, on an Apple device, the way to close apps is to double-click the home button and to swipe up each app that's open, and it will close the app. Or if that doesn't work, then you can just try and restarting your device. In fact, you'll find that just restarting your device fixes a lot of issues. Also with cell phones, you may encounter issues where your GPS is not working. Certain applications on your phone require GPS. So if a certain app is not working, it could be that your GPS is turned off. So the first and most obvious thing to do is to go into the settings on your phone and make sure that the GPS is turned on. Or if you find out that your GPS is turned on and you're still having issues, you have to remember that your GPS uses satellites for communication. So for example, if there's a cloudy day, then that could interfere with satellite communication. Or maybe there's a spaceship passing by, and that could also interfere with GPS satellite communication. Now, as far as troubleshooting issues with laptops, one of the main problems, when you turn the power on, your screen is blank. Nothing shows up on the screen. Now, you may hear the fans running, and you may see the LEDs turn on, but your screen is still blank. And this is called a no display issue. Now, this could happen for a few reasons, but the best thing to do right off the start is that if you have an external monitor, go ahead and connect an external monitor to your laptop and see if an image shows up on the external monitor, because most, if not all, laptops will have an external video port on the side of a laptop where you can hook up an external monitor. Now, if an image does show up on the external monitor, then that most likely means that your LCD monitor on your laptop is bad and it needs to be replaced. Another problem is that when you turn the laptop on and the image is very faint, in other words, the display is very dim, and in this case, most likely, you would have to replace the inverter. The inverter is a small circuit board that supplies power to the LCD monitor. It converts DC current to AC current. The inverter is usually mounted inside the display panel just below the screen. You may also encounter an issue with your laptop where the battery is not being charged. Now, your battery is in the laptop and a battery charger is plugged in, but you'll notice that there's an indicator informing you that the battery is not charging. Now, most likely this could be a problem with the battery itself, and it needs to be replaced. Or it could also be a problem with the laptop's motherboard. Or in another scenario, let's say your battery is fully charged, but the battery only lasts a few minutes before it discharges. Now, this is a very common issue with older laptops. Oftentimes, when laptops reach around 5 years old, the battery will only last on a few minutes on a full charge. For example, they may only last about 10 minutes on a full charge. And this happens because batteries lose their capacity to hold a charge as they get older. So to solve this issue, all you have to do is just replace the battery for the laptop. Now, if you press the power button on your laptop and nothing happens, in other words, you don't see any power LEDs, your screen is totally blank, and you don't hear any fans turning, well then one of the first things to check is to make sure that your battery charger is plugged into the wall and at the other end is plugged into your laptop. And once you verify that and still nothing happens, then most likely you have a dead laptop. In other words, the motherboard is dead and needs to be replaced. A flickering monitor can also be related to a bad LCD or inverter, especially if the failure is related to movement. In other words, if the flickering happens when you physically move the laptop. So this is a definite hardware failure that's most likely related to a bad LCD or inverter. Problems with keys sticking is another issue that can happen with laptops. One thing you notice is that laptop keyboards are not as durable as desktop keyboards, so they are more susceptible to wear and tear, so they tend to wear out a lot faster. So if you're going to repair or replace a keyboard on a laptop, you need to be extra careful. Another issue on laptops is sometimes people complain as they're typing on the keyboard that the mouse cursor will move all by itself. And this is known as ghost cursor. And the main reason that this happens, especially in my own personal experience and dealing with customers, is that when a person types on a laptop keyboard, a lot of times they don't realize that the palms of their hand or maybe the sleeve on their shirt is touching the touchpad, which will move the cursor. And so the best way to solve this issue is to go to the software touchpad settings on the computer and disable the tap feature. Or another issue that could cause this problem could be improper touchpad drivers. So the best thing to do in this case is to go to the manufacturer's website and download the correct and latest drivers for the touchpad. A very common issue that happens with laptops is overheating. A lot of people complain that as they're working on their laptop, the laptop shuts down or freezes, which is a very common symptom of overheating. Now, laptops have air vents either on the side or on the bottom of the laptop along with fans. And air passes through these vents and fans to help cool the laptop. But if these vents are blocked, for example with dust, or if the fans are dusty, it will hinder the laptop's cooling ability. So the best way to fix this is to get a can of compressed air and blow out the vents and fans and free them from any dust or debris. But another issue that causes a laptop to overheat is that a lot of times people use their laptops and they're not placing them on a hard flat surface. For example, they're using them on the couch or on their bed. And when this happens, a lot of times the vents and fans will get blocked and will hinder air circulation, especially if the fans and vents are on the bottom of the laptop. All laptops have the capability of wireless networking, and a lot of times you may experience a situation where you have an intermittent wireless connection. Now, this could be caused by a problem where there is interference between your laptop and your wireless router. Or it could also be that you're out of range of the wireless signal from your wireless router. Another issue could be that you need to update your wireless network card drivers, especially when there's a new operating system that's been released. In fact, I have personally found this issue to be very common with the release of a new operating system, especially with Windows 10, where a common fix to fix an intermittent wireless issue is to go to the laptop's manufacturer's website and update your wireless network card drivers. The power supply is a device that supplies power to the computer. It's a square metal box with a bunch of wires emerging from one end. It fits inside the computer case and is usually located at the very top or the bottom of a standard tower case. The power supply converts 110-volt AC current into the specific voltages that the computer needs. The most common form factor that a power supply comes in is ATX. The power supply is equipped with different types of connectors. One connector is called the P1 connector. This is the main power connector that connects directly into the motherboard and provides it with power. The P1 connector has either 20 or 24 pins. Another type of connector is called the P4. This is a 4-pin connector that also connects into the motherboard, and its purpose is to supply power to the CPU. This connector is used with modern motherboards. Another connector is called Molex. The Molex connector is a 4-pin connector that connects disk drives such as hard drives and CD and DVD-ROM drives. There is also a serial ATA connector. This is a 15-pin connector, and this is used to connect disk drives that have a serial ATA power plug. Another connector is called the 4-pin Berg connector, or mini connector. This is a small connector that is used to supply power to the floppy drive. And finally, there is the 6-pin connector, and this is used to supply power to certain PCIe video cards. The motherboard is the main component of a computer. It's basically a large circuit board where all the computer components connect to, such as the processor socket. The processor socket is where the CPU, or Central Processing Unit, is placed. There's also the memory slots, and this is where the primary memory modules, known as RAM, are inserted. And there's also the bus slots. The bus slots are used to install various components to add more capabilities to a computer, such as a video card, sound card, network card, and so on. Motherboards come in different shapes and sizes, known as a form factor. The most common form factor motherboard that is used in PCs today is ATX. ATX stands for Advanced Technology Extended. It was created in 1995 by Intel and is now the de facto standard form factor for PCs today. A full-size ATX motherboard is 12 inches by 9.6 inches. Prior to the development of ATX was the AT form factor. AT stands for Advanced Technology. This was the form factor that was used in the 1980s that was developed by IBM. AT motherboards are 12 inches by 13.8 inches in size, and they are no longer in development since the succession of ATX. Another version of the ATX motherboard is the Micro ATX. Micro ATX motherboards are smaller than ATX boards, as its name suggests. Micro ATX boards are 9.6 inches by 9.6 inches, so it's a square design compared to the standard rectangular design of the ATX. They are cheaper than ATX boards and were designed to fit in smaller computer cases. They also have fewer features and consume less power than a standard ATX board. The BTX form factor was designed by Intel to make further improvements from the ATX form factor, such as an improved board design, which creates a more inline airflow, which improves cooling. For example, notice how the memory and bus slots are horizontal, flowing with the direction of the airflow instead of inhibiting compared to the ATX form factor. Another improvement is the structure design, which is flexible enough to work in both smaller cases and larger tower cases. And BTX motherboards take full advantage of the new input-output technologies such as Serial ATA, USB 2.0, and PCI Express. Even smaller than the micro ATX and BTX motherboards, there's the ITX form factor. The ITX form factor came out in 2001, starting with the Mini ITX shown here. And this was designed for the ever-increasing demand for smaller space-saving computers. The ITX standard consumes less power, and because they use less power, they are often cooled only by the use of heat sinks, and not with fans. ITX was developed by VIA Technologies, and there are currently 4 sizes that are in the ITX form factor. There's the Mini ITX, there's also the Nano ITX, which came out in 2005 and was designed to be used in devices such as digital video recorders, media centers, and cars. Then there's also the Pico ITX, which came out in 2007. And in 2009, VIA Technologies introduced the smallest x86 CPU module specification in the industry, with the release of the Mobile ITX. The Mobile ITX measures 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters, and it was designed to provide developers with a standardized and ultra-compact specification for building new computer-based products. Another form factor is the NLX. NLX was created by Intel, and it was designed for low-end, low-profile computers. Instead of expansion cards that plug perpendicular into the motherboard, the NLX boards use a riser card, where expansion cards can plug in parallel with the motherboard. You would typically find NLX boards in slimline computer cases. Motherboards come built with several input-output interfaces. These interfaces are largely located on the rear input-output panel of the motherboard. For example, the PS2 connector. The PS2 connector is a 6-pin multi-DIN connector. A motherboard will typically have 2 of these, and are usually located towards the top of the motherboard. One connector is for plugging in the mouse. This is the green PS2 slot. And the other is for plugging in the keyboard, which is the purple slot. But PS2 connectors are an older technology and is slowly being phased out in favor of the USB port. The most common interface on a motherboard is the USB port. USB stands for Universal Serial Bus, and motherboards will typically have several USB ports because there are so many different peripherals that utilize the USB interface, such as keyboards, mice, cameras, external drives, and printers. In addition to connectivity, the USB port also supplies electric power to that specific peripheral. Some USB ports are mounted on the rear input-output panel, and some are located directly on the surface of the motherboard. The first USB interface was version 1.0 in 1996. The transfer speed was 1.5 megabits per second. Version 1.1 was introduced in 1998 with a transfer speed of 12 megabits per second. Version 2.0 came out in 2001 with a transfer speed of 480 megabits per second. And the latest version is USB 3.0. This has data transfer speeds of up to 5 gigabits per second. Another interface that can be found in older motherboards is the serial port. The term serial refers to sending data 1 bit at a time. The serial port is an older technology interface which is rarely seen on new motherboards today. Back then, this was mainly used for connecting terminals and modems to computers. but now it has been widely replaced by the faster USB interface. The most common interface of a serial port is the RS-232 standard, which uses the common D connector, such as the DE9. The parallel port is another interface that could be found on a motherboard I/O panel. It was mainly used for connecting printers, and like the serial port, it is also being phased out and replaced by the faster performance of a USB port. It uses a wide D-sub connector known as the DB25. And unlike serial ports that send data one bit at a time, the parallel port sends data signals simultaneously over several parallel channels. A video adapter is another interface that could appear on the motherboard. Now I say it could appear because some motherboards have a video adapter and some don't. But the motherboards that do have a video adapter, then this is known as integrated video, because the video adapter and the motherboard are essentially one unit. The video adapter is what generates images from your computer to your monitor. The most common kind of port on an integrated video adapter is VGA, which stands for Video Graphics Array. The VGA port carries analog data, it has 15 pins, divided into 3 rows, and usually has a blue color. Integrated video adapters are usually not very powerful. They are good for normal everyday use with light applications, but when used for extensive graphic applications, such as gaming, they can fall short. That's why a lot of people will bypass the integrated video and buy an aftermarket video card that has enough power to suit their needs. The IEEE 1394 connector is commonly known as FireWire. FireWire is recognized by its D shape and is commonly used to attach devices such as digital cameras and printers. It's very similar to a USB port. FireWire and USB are both used to attach peripherals, and they both have similar transfer speeds. But FireWire is not as popular as USB. That's why on a modern motherboard today, there might not be any FireWire ports. Or if there are, you might find 1 or 2. And FireWire has a transfer speed of 400 megabits per second. The NIC or Network Interface Card is a port on the motherboard that is used for networking purposes, such as connecting to the internet and sharing data between computers. The port is designed for an Ethernet cable with an attached RJ45 connector. A NIC provides a computer with a constant dedicated connection to a network. And each NIC has its own unique identifier called a MAC address. The transfer speed ranges from 10 to 1000 megabits per second. A sound card is another type of interface that could be found on a motherboard. And just like integrated video, if a motherboard has a sound card built in, then this is known as integrated sound. A sound card is what processes audio through the computer's speakers. A basic sound card has an audio output port for attaching speakers, and an input port for a microphone for recording purposes. More sophisticated sound cards will have extra ports. For example, ports for subwoofers and surround sound, and ports for other digital audio equipment. Some motherboards have a SATA port on the rear input-output panel. This is known as eSATA or external SATA. eSATA is for attaching an external SATA drive to a computer. For example, an external SATA hard drive. It functions similar to USB and FireWire, but the transfer speed is faster. But the disadvantage it has compared to USB and FireWire is that eSATA requires a separate power plug to supply the drive with power. But there is a new SATA port called eSATA-P, which is power over eSATA. This port combines data transfer and power in an all-in-one port, similar to USB and FireWire. Adapter cards or expansion cards are circuit boards that can be installed into the expansion slots on a computer's motherboard. These adapter cards are installed to increase the functionality of the computer. Some examples of expansion cards are video cards, audio cards, storage cards, and so on. One of the most common adapter cards is a video card. A video card is what generates images from your computer to your monitor. A typical video card is a printed circuit board that directly attaches to the computer's motherboard. Video cards are also known as graphics cards, graphics adapters, and so on. A video card has several key components, such as a graphics processor unit or GPU, memory chips, a bus type, and video ports. The way video is transferred from the video card to the monitor is through the video ports. There are several different types of video ports that are used today. One port is called S-Video or separate video, or also known as Super Video. S-Video is an analog transmitter. It transmits two signals over one cable. One signal is for color, and the other signal is for brightness. The S-Video port is round and is usually a black color. Another port is called VGA. This stands for Video Graphics Array. The VGA port is an older technology that was developed in 1987. The VGA port has 15 pins divided into 3 rows and usually has a blue color. The VGA port carries analog data. Another video port is called the Digital Visual Interface or DVI. And this is a newer technology designed to succeed the older VGA port. It was developed in 1999 and it was designed to provide uncompressed, high-quality video to LCD monitors. Now there are 3 different versions of the DVI cable standards. There's DVI-A, where the A stands for analog, and this is used to send only analog signals. And there's also DVI-D, where the D stands for digital, and this is used to send only digital signals. And there's also the DVI-I, where the I stands for integrated, and this is used to send both analog and digital signals. Now on the connectors that are able to send digital signals, which would be the DVI-D and the DVI-I, there are 2 different options in the DVI standard. There's single link and dual link. The difference is that dual link has 6 extra pins, and these pins is what allows for a higher resolution than single link cables. Another type of video port is called HDMI, which stands for High Definition Multimedia Interface. HDMI was developed in 2002, and it was designed for transmitting uncompressed video and audio digital data through a single cable. HDMI is one of the best standards for high definition in consumer electronics, delivering crystal clear video as well as audio. And then there's also the DisplayPort. The DisplayPort debuted in 2006, and it was developed by VESA, which stands for the Video Electronics Standard Association. The DisplayPort was primarily designed to be used for video, but in addition to video, it can also be used to carry USB and audio data as well. It's a high-performance interface that is meant to replace the older VGA and DVI interfaces. And it can also connect using adapters to the older DVI, VGA, and HDMI ports. A sound card is another type of adapter card that processes audio through the computer's speakers. A sound card attaches into the computer's motherboard through a bus slot. A basic sound card has an audio output port for attaching speakers and an input port for a microphone for recording purposes. More sophisticated sound cards have extra ports. For example, ports for subwoofers and surround sound, and ports for other digital audio equipment.